Today is Decarbonisation Day, a day allocated by the Egyptian COP27 presidency to discuss ultimately achieving net zero emissions, even in hard-to-abate sectors. Now, this includes the commercial shipping industry, which is lagging far behind in this area. The industry is responsible for at least 2.5% of the world's annual total carbon emissions. And while that figure could seem relatively small, it can still have a significant impact on the environment. So how can we decarbonize shipping? Well, the answer probably won't surprise you, considering it's one of the oldest marine propulsion methods, harnessing the immense power of wind. And for more, let's bring in Gavin Allwright. He is Secretary General at the International Windship Association. Mr. Allwright, we are on this tide race to get to carbon neutral by 2050, and we're seeing new technologies in the shipping industry, such as solar, green fuels being promising options. But wind power is also making a comeback. Could you help break it down for us? How does wind propulsion work to reduce carbon emissions?
Yes, thank you for having me today. And wind propulsion is it's an age-old system where you deliver the power directly to the ship rather than changing it into a fuel. And we're putting different modern style sails, rotors, kites onto ships, which can reduce existing ships' usage of fuel by 20 to 30%, and new builds, which are really optimized for wind, anything up to 100%.
So why are we going back to it now, and why did wind power actually left in the first place?
That's a really good question. We like to think we're going forward to wind. These are very modern, automated systems, but of course, they do have a great tradition of wind behind them. Maybe up to 6,000 years of wind being used. Frankly, it's because we had ultra cheap, subsidized fossil fuels that were abundant, especially in the 20th century. We're now looking at coming to the end of that sequence or that cycle where carbon taxes, the health costs are starting to be included into the price of fossil fuels. So a free energy source that's abundant around the world and globally available today is a very attractive prospect.
Yeah, in the old days, wind power meant a fabric sail on a wooden mast. How has wind power evolved over the years? And could you also share with us some of these new technologies?
Certainly. If anybody's watched any of the racing, the yacht racing systems, then you'll have seen systems that are rigid, a rigid wing sail, very similar in action to an aircraft wing. So if you wonder why an A380 Airbus, those giant jumbo jets, can take off, that's because they generate an incredible amount of lift for a very small area of sail. This is exactly what we're putting, but we're raising it up and putting it vertical onto ships. There are also rotors which rotate and catch the wind, much like say a curveball in baseball does. It creates a whipping effect called the Magnus effect. And we have kites as well, for example, which are deployed at 200, 300 meters, where the wind is always blowing. If you've been to the top of the Eiffel Tower or a great skyscraper, you'll know how windy it is up there. So this generates a huge amount of thrust or lift to the vessel.
So these solutions can somewhat provide a significant reduction in fuel usage and emissions. But why aren't more shipping companies moving towards wind propulsion? Do regulations actually have a part to play?
No, indeed. Well, there's really three main reasons that I can give you. There are a lot, but one is the price, which I've already touched upon. When you have incredibly cheap fossil fuel, and remember, the shipping industry uses the dregs, the bottom of the barrel of oil. So it's actually the waste that can't be used for anything else. It needs to be heated and then burned, and that's incredibly cheap to use. There is no tax on shipping fuel, and there's no carbon tax as yet. Another one is perception. just as you mentioned at the beginning, at the top of the interview, going back, it's an old system. Oh, we're going back to the old days. Well, really, actually, these are very futuristic systems and very modern. So that perception has needed to be changed. And probably the third one is, we are in a conservative industry that puts safety first. So testing, methodical validation of the systems is really, really important. And we have now 25 ships, or we will by the end of the year have 25 large ships in operation. By 2023, that will double. So in 12 months, we will double the number that we've deployed in the last decade. So it's really picking up. So ship owners have been reluctant or slow to pick up this. Now they're facing very high costs and regulatory restrictions that, while are getting better, are still not quite ambitious enough.
Mr. Allwright, before we go, what's the way forward then? How can we actually encourage more shipping companies to sail towards this direction?
Yeah, it's a really good question again, and the real drivers in this transition are the cargo owners or the charterers who rent the ships, if you like. So these are the companies, some household names. For example, we have members Michelin, we have Cargill, who move around grain and other stores. The cargo owners that want to move their goods with low carbon, those are the ones that face the public. So if you really want to encourage your the supplier of any of your goods, inquire what is their ESG, what are their environmental credentials like. Push them to decarbonize their supply chains. If you're buying anything as a business, push the shippers to go for the lowest carbon option, not just the cheapest, but the lowest. The great thing with wind is it's a free energy. So in a sense, it's a no regret choice. It's free and it's decarbonizing. So it changes a hard to abate sector into one that has access uniquely to a free energy source.
That's some great advice. Thank you so much, Mr. Allwright. That was Gavin Allwright, Secretary General at the International Windship Association.